A simple woman was mocked by an elite panel, then solved the impossible case in seconds. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Catherine Miller was no stranger to hard work, but today, she felt out of place. Dressed in a simple gray cardigan and black pants, she entered the grand courtroom with a quiet sense of determination. The marble floors reflected the light of the chandelier above, and the high ceilings made the room feel both imposing and cold. She had been called to this prestigious panel, a group of renowned experts, to answer questions about a complex legal case. Catherine wasn't a lawyer, and she knew that her credentials, though impressive, didn't carry the weight they once did in the professional world. What they didn't know was that she had more than just academic knowledge, she had the practical skills to solve the impossible. As she took her seat, the panel members exchanged skeptical glances. They were used to dealing with top-tier professionals, people with degrees from Ivy League schools, people who had decades of experience in the field. They weren't expecting someone like Catherine. She wasn't the type of person who would typically step into this kind of arena. Her reputation, though, had preceded her, even if they didn't realize it. The first question came from the panel chair, a seasoned professor named Dr. Richard Evans. Ms. Miller, he began, his voice dripping with condescension, could you explain why you think you're qualified to solve a case of this complexity? Catherine took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their judgment, but she held her ground. I believe the facts will speak for themselves, she replied, her voice calm yet confident. There were murmurs in the room. The panel members exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed. One of the younger members, a lawyer named Thomas Jameson, spoke up next. You must realize, Ms. Miller, that this isn't a simple case. The intricacies involved require specialized knowledge. Do you think your approach is even viable? Catherine felt a tightening in her chest, but she didn't show it. I've handled more complicated cases before, she said, her words steady. The panel scoffed, assuming she was bluffing. As a joke, Dr. Evans continued, maybe you'd like to try solving this case right now. How about you take a crack at the toughest question we have? Let's see if your experience matches the task at hand. There it was. The challenge she had been waiting for. The room went silent, every eye now on Catherine as she stood and approached the whiteboard. She felt the weight of their skepticism pressing against her, but she didn't falter. She quickly analyzed the case details on the board, formulating a strategy in her mind. Seconds later, her marker was moving swiftly across the board, writing down the steps and logic behind her solution. As she completed the final step, she stepped back and turned to face the panel. The room was still. The air was thick with silence. Dr. Evans was speechless. The rest of the panel members stared at the board in disbelief. The impossible had been solved, in mere seconds. Catherine's solution was not just correct, it was elegant, concise, and demonstrated an understanding of the case far beyond their expectations. The chair of the panel cleared his throat, still in shock. Well, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, it seems you were more than qualified after all. Catherine nodded politely, but inside, she felt a surge of quiet triumph. The panel had learned the hard way not to judge a book by its cover. Catherine stood still in the center of the room, her mind racing, yet her expression calm and composed. The air was thick with the weight of the silence that had fallen over the panel. Her heart, which had been pounding moments before, now settled into a steady rhythm. She could feel their eyes on her, the shock, the disbelief, the questions that swirled in their minds. Dr. Evans, who had once mocked her, now stood frozen, his hands clasped in front of him as though he had been struck silent. The rest of the panel, typically sharp, reserved, and quick to respond, remained motionless, unsure of what to say next. It was as though Catherine had somehow transcended their expectations in a way that left them without words. The clock on the wall ticked softly, but to Catherine, it felt like an eternity. She could hear the faint murmurs from the audience behind her, their whispers barely audible but carrying an air of respect and awe. They had all seen it, the impossible had been solved. Catherine's eyes flickered toward the large window at the back of the room, where the bright sunlight streamed in, casting a golden hue over the polished marble floors. The stillness was broken by the sound of Dr. Evans clearing his throat, his voice shaky as he spoke. I must admit, I underestimated you." His words, though hesitant, were laced with a sense of begrudging respect. Catherine nodded once, acknowledging his statement without a hint of pride. She had come here with one goal, to prove that capability could never be measured by appearances or assumptions. The rest of the panel exchanged glances, the weight of their earlier mockery now fully evident in their eyes. "How did you do it?" asked one of the other panel members, a tall woman with sharp features. "How did you solve it so quickly?" Catherine turned to face her, her expression softening. "It wasn't magic," she said, her voice calm and steady. "It was simply about breaking the problem down to its fundamentals. Sometimes, the answers are simpler than they appear when you focus on the basics." The woman nodded slowly, as if coming to terms with the fact that Catherine had not only solved the problem, but had done so in a way that made it seem easy. "This is remarkable," another member of the panel spoke up, his tone softer now. "We all thought we had the upper hand, that we held the knowledge, but you proved us wrong." Catherine gave a small, almost imperceptible smile, though she kept her eyes steady. "Knowledge is not about who has the most degrees or the most experience," she replied. "It's about the willingness to approach a problem with an open mind, to see what others may not." The room fell silent again, and for the first time, Catherine could see that the panel was beginning to recognize not just her intelligence, but her quiet strength. She was not here to prove anything to them, but to herself. The challenge had been unexpected, but now that it was over, she realized that this moment, this victory, was hers alone. As the silence lingered, Dr. Evans finally broke it, his voice firmer now. "Catherine, I must say, your approach is inspiring. I think it's safe to say that none of us saw this coming." The other members nodded in agreement, their expressions shifting from skepticism to respect. Catherine felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had done it. She had not just solved the case, she had shown them all that sometimes, the most powerful minds don't always come from the most expected places. She looked at the panel one last time, her gaze steady. "I'm glad I could be of assistance," she said, her voice calm but resolute. And with that, Catherine Miller, the woman who had been dismissed as an outsider, had shown the world her brilliance, not with words, but with action. Catherine stood quietly as the room finally began to stir, the members of the panel now fully aware of her brilliance. She had walked into this room as an outsider, someone they didn't expect to make a mark, but now, she was the one who had earned their respect. The panel, once filled with judgment, now seemed to understand the power of quiet determination and intellect. The room was no longer filled with skepticism, but with something different: acknowledgement. As Catherine gathered her notes, preparing to leave the room, Dr. Evans approached her. His earlier dismissive tone had vanished, replaced by a rare humility. "Ms. Miller," he began, his voice steady but with an undertone of respect, "I must admit, I was wrong to doubt you." Catherine met his gaze, her expression calm, yet there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes. It was the first time in this room that someone had truly seen her for who she was, not just a simple woman, but a woman with the ability to challenge even the most elite. "Thank you," she replied simply. "I'm glad I could help." The words seemed to carry more weight than usual, as if they were not just a polite response, but a statement of quiet triumph. As Catherine turned to leave, one of the younger panel members, a woman named Karen, stopped her. "Catherine, I just wanted to say," Karen started, her voice a little unsure, "your approach, it was amazing. I never would have thought to approach it that way." Catherine smiled softly, her demeanor unchanged. "Sometimes, it's about seeing the problem from a different angle," she said. "It's not about how much you know, it's about being able to apply what you do know in the right way." Karen nodded, clearly impressed, but Catherine could tell the woman had more to say. "I think," Karen continued, her voice growing more confident, "I've learned more in the last few minutes from you than I have in years of studying." Catherine looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "That's the thing about knowledge," Catherine said thoughtfully. "It's not meant to be hoarded, it's meant to be shared." With that, Catherine left the room, the weight of her achievements settling in. She had come here not to prove herself to anyone else, but to prove something to herself. And she had succeeded. As she walked through the building, the whispers of the panel members faded into the background. The mission she had been given had been completed, and now, her confidence was more solid than ever. Outside, the sun was shining brightly, a welcome contrast to the cool, imposing atmosphere of the panel room. She could feel the warmth on her face, the soft breeze as she walked towards her car. As she reached it, she paused for a moment, looking back at the building behind her. The old doubts, the ones that used to hold her back, seemed to melt away. Catherine had done more than just solve a case. She had shown the world and herself that there was strength in humility, and that real power came from within. She got into her car and drove off, the road ahead of her now feeling just a little bit clearer. Catherine walked through the busy streets, her mind still replaying the events of the day. It had been hours since she had left the panel, but the emotions from the experience were still fresh. She had proven herself, yes, but now there was a new weight she had to carry. A weight of possibility. The world felt different, somehow. As she reached her car, she took a deep breath, looking up at the clear sky above. It had always felt like her potential was locked away, hidden behind the simplicity of her life, but today she had cracked it open. Today, she had shown that anyone, no matter their background, could make an impact. Catherine got into her car. Her hands gripping the steering wheel, and started the engine. The hum of the engine was steady and comforting as she drove through the city. She was heading home now, but the drive felt like the beginning of something new. For so long, she had lived her life in the shadows, content with the work she did for others. But today, that had changed. She wasn't just a simple woman anymore. She had proven that her knowledge and abilities were not defined by her appearance or her lack of a prestigious degree. As she turned onto her street, she could see her house in the distance. A modest, quiet place. It had always been enough for her, but now, it felt like a symbol of everything she had built for herself, everything she had accomplished without the world even knowing. She pulled into the driveway and parked her car, taking a moment before stepping out. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the front yard. It was a peaceful sight, but Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to shift. The door to her house creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, the familiar smells of home greeted her, freshly brewed coffee, the faint scent of lavender from the candles she kept in the living room. It was quiet here, a stark contrast to the buzzing energy of the panel earlier. She made her way to the kitchen, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from an unknown number. Catherine hesitated for a moment before opening it. The message read, "Catherine, we need to talk. I heard about what happened today. You've proven yourself, but I think you're just getting started. I want to offer you a position, something that will truly allow you to show the world what you're capable of." The message came from someone high up, someone influential, but Catherine didn't recognize the name. She set the phone down, her thoughts swirling. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. But what did this mean for her? She had spent so long proving herself to the world, and now the world was reaching out to her. She took a sip of her coffee, her mind racing with possibilities. But one thing was clear, this was just the beginning. Catherine sat at her kitchen table, the phone still buzzing beside her. The message she had just received lingered in her mind, like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. She hadn't expected this. Her life had always been about quietly doing her work, never seeking the spotlight. But now, it seemed as though the world was calling her to step into it. She picked up the phone again, her fingers hovering over the screen, unsure of how to respond. The offer, while intriguing, also felt like a step into uncharted territory. Was she ready for this? Was she ready to put herself out there in a way she never had before? Catherine closed her eyes for a moment, collecting her thoughts. She had spent so much of her life feeling like an outsider, constantly underestimated. But today, after everything that had happened, she knew she had the power to change that narrative. She was no longer just the woman behind the scenes. She was the one with the answers, the one who had proven herself in a room full of the most accomplished professionals. With a steady breath, she opened the message again, reading it over carefully. The words still felt surreal, but they were clear. Someone important wanted her to be a part of something bigger, something that could push her to the next level. She couldn't deny the excitement building inside her, but there was also a part of her that felt uncertain. The path ahead was unclear, but Catherine knew one thing for sure: she was ready to take it. She typed her response quickly, her fingers moving with newfound confidence. "I'm interested. Let's discuss further." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. A few moments passed, and the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a confirmation, a meeting scheduled for the following week. Catherine put the phone down and leaned back in her chair, her thoughts racing. The decision had been made. She was stepping into a new chapter, one that would require her to embrace her abilities fully. She had always been content to stay in the background, helping others, staying out of the spotlight. But now, it was time to let her light shine. The next few days passed in a blur of anticipation. Catherine spent her time preparing, reviewing her work, organizing her thoughts. She knew this opportunity would be different. It wouldn't be like the panel she had faced just days ago, where her intelligence had been questioned. This time, she was walking into a space where her skills would be seen for what they truly were: valuable, powerful, and necessary. When the day of the meeting arrived, Catherine dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant outfit that reflected her personality, understated, but strong. She took one last look at herself in the mirror before leaving the house, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. As she stepped out the door, she felt the weight of what was about to happen. This was her chance to prove not just to others, but to herself, that she could handle anything that came her way. She had spent so many years doubting her own worth, letting the opinions of others define her. But not anymore. She was Catherine Miller, and she was ready to take on the world. Catherine arrived at the meeting location, a sleek, modern office building with glass windows that reflected the bright afternoon sun. She stepped out of her car, her heart racing with both excitement and nerves. This was it, her chance to prove that her skills were more than enough to stand alongside the most accomplished professionals. She walked into the lobby, greeted by a receptionist who directed her to the elevator. As she ascended to the top floor, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her mind. When the elevator doors opened, she was met by a well-dressed man with a firm handshake, his smile warm but professional. "Ms. Miller," he said, his tone respectful, "thank you for coming. We've heard a lot about your recent accomplishments. I'm looking forward to discussing how we can work together." Catherine smiled politely and nodded. "Thank you for having me," she replied. The office was impressive. Large windows gave a panoramic view of the city, and the sleek, minimalist decor conveyed power and professionalism. As they sat down at a conference table, Catherine could feel the weight of the moment. This was a different world from the one she was used to, but she was ready for it. "Let's get straight to it," the man said, opening a folder in front of him. "We've reviewed your work, and we believe you have the potential to help us with a very important project. But we need to know if you're ready to step up in a big way. This is more than just consulting. It's about leadership." Catherine leaned forward slightly, her mind focused. This was what she had been waiting for, but the weight of the decision felt heavy. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "I've spent years working quietly, honing my skills. I'm prepared to take on this challenge." The man nodded, clearly impressed by her confidence. "That's exactly what we want to hear. You're not like the others we've met. You don't just talk about your skills, you show them. That's why we think you'll be a great fit for this project." As they discussed the details of the opportunity, Catherine could feel her confidence growing. She wasn't just participating in this meeting as an outsider anymore. She was part of the conversation, part of the future. She was no longer the woman who had to prove herself, she had already done that. Now, she was being recognized for what she could offer, and it felt like the beginning of something big. The meeting continued, and Catherine spoke with clarity and insight, offering ideas and solutions that impressed everyone in the room. When the meeting finally ended, the man stood and extended his hand to Catherine once again. We'll be in touch soon, he said with a smile. I'm excited about what we can do together. As she left the building and stepped back into the car, Catherine couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning. She had proven herself, and now, the world was beginning to see what she was capable of. She had taken the first step into a future she had always known she deserved, and nothing was going to hold her back now. Catherine spent the following days reflecting on the meeting. The excitement was still fresh, but she could feel the weight of the decision she had made. She had accepted an opportunity that could change the course of her life, and now it was time to prove that she belonged in this new world. The email confirming her acceptance of the position came a few days later, and with it, the official start of her new role. As she opened the message, she felt a surge of pride. This was no longer a dream. It was her reality. She sat down at her desk, the papers and files in front of her. The work ahead was vast, but Catherine was ready. For years, she had quietly worked behind the scenes, but now, she would be taking center stage. Her phone buzzed, and she looked at the screen. It was a message from the man who had first offered her the position. Welcome aboard, Catherine. We're excited to have you on the team. The next step is a strategy session next week. Prepare your ideas, and we'll discuss the direction we're heading. The message was simple, but it was the beginning of something big. Catherine immediately began to organize her thoughts, reviewing everything she had done up to this point. She had built her success on her ability to think strategically, and now she would apply that skill in a new context. She spent the rest of the day outlining her ideas, making sure everything was in place for the upcoming meeting. The next week came quickly, and Catherine found herself in a large conference room surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the field. The team she had joined was filled with people who had accomplished incredible things, and for the first time in her career, Catherine wasn't just an observer. She was a participant. As the meeting began, Catherine spoke confidently, offering insights that were well received by the team. Her perspective was fresh, and it was clear that she was bringing something new to the table. The leader of the team, a woman named Vanessa, was impressed. Catherine, your ideas are exactly what we need. You're bringing a level of strategic thinking that will elevate our work. Catherine smiled, but inside, she was already thinking about the next step. This wasn't just a compliment, it was a challenge. She wasn't here to just participate. She was here to lead. The meeting continued, and Catherine's ideas began to shape the direction of the project. As the team discussed various aspects of the plan, it became clear that Catherine's vision was exactly what was needed to move forward. She had the ability to connect the dots in ways others hadn't thought of. As the session ended, Vanessa turned to Catherine. You're a real asset to the team, she said, her voice filled with respect. Catherine nodded, but inside, she was already thinking ahead. This was just the beginning. She had proven herself in the panel, but this was a new challenge. It was time to take what she had learned and apply it on a much larger scale. The next few weeks flew by as Catherine continued to immerse herself in the project. She worked tirelessly, constantly refining her ideas and pushing the team to think outside the box. As the project gained momentum, Catherine's role became even more prominent. She was no longer just contributing ideas, she was leading the charge. The team began to see her as not just a skilled strategist, but as a natural leader. By the time the project was ready for launch, Catherine had earned the respect of her colleagues. She had gone from the quiet woman in the background to the one who drove the project forward. And as the project launched successfully, Catherine realized that she had truly stepped into her potential. This was the life she had been working toward all along, the life where she wasn't just seen, but where her brilliance was recognized and celebrated. Catherine stood at the edge of her office window, looking out at the city below. The skyline stretched out before her, a sea of lights and possibilities. It had been a few months since she had joined the team, and the project she had helped lead was now a success. She had earned the respect of her colleagues and had proven herself time and time again. Yet, as she gazed out at the city, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The weight of her achievements so far was undeniable, but she knew there was more she was capable of. Catherine had spent so much of her life holding back, waiting for the right moment to step into the spotlight, and now that she was here, she had no intention of fading into the background again. The next challenge was waiting, and it was time to face it head-on. Her phone buzzed on her desk, breaking her from her thoughts. She picked it up and saw a message from Vanessa. "Catherine, we need you to lead a new initiative. The higher-ups are impressed with what you've done so far, and they want you to take charge of a major project. It's all yours." Catherine's heart skipped a beat. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. She had been part of a team before, but now, she was being asked to lead. This wasn't just a promotion, it was the chance to make a real impact. She immediately responded, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "I'm ready. Let's do this." As she sent the message, a sense of excitement and determination washed over her. Catherine wasn't just going to be part of something. She was going to build something that would leave a mark on the company, on the industry, and on herself. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, brainstorming sessions, and planning. Catherine was thrust into the heart of the new project, taking charge of every aspect. She guided her team with confidence, pushing them to think bigger, to take risks, and to aim higher. Her leadership style was calm but firm, and her ability to see the bigger picture was exactly what the project needed. As the project began to take shape, Catherine noticed a shift in how people interacted with her. She wasn't just seen as the quiet woman in the corner anymore. She was the one people turned to for answers, the one they trusted to get things done. It was a new feeling, one that she had dreamed about for years, but never quite believed was possible. As the project neared its completion, Catherine stood in front of her team, feeling a sense of pride that was almost overwhelming. They had worked tirelessly, and now it was time to see it all come together. The launch was a success, and the results spoke for themselves. Catherine's leadership had turned an idea into reality, and her team had helped make it happen. The company took notice, and Catherine was recognized for her exceptional work. But it wasn't the recognition that mattered most to her, it was the realization that she had found her place. She wasn't just a woman who had been overlooked or underestimated. She was a leader, a force to be reckoned with. As she walked through the office that day, Catherine felt a sense of peace. She had made it. And this was only the beginning of the impact she would continue to make. Catherine stood in the conference room, looking out at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light across the skyline. It had been a year since she had taken the leap into leadership, and now, standing at the top of the company, she could hardly believe how far she had come. The challenges, the doubts, the setbacks, all of it had led her here. And here, she had earned more than just a seat at the table, she had earned the respect and trust of everyone around her. The journey had not been easy. There were moments when she questioned her own decisions, when she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. But with every project, every challenge, and every success, Catherine had grown stronger. She had proven to herself and to others that she was capable of handling anything that came her way. The company had been transformed under her leadership, and now, as the team gathered for their final presentation, Catherine couldn't help but feel proud. This was the culmination of all the hard work, the sleepless nights, and the relentless drive that had pushed her to the top. As she stood before her colleagues, the same sense of calm determination washed over her. The presentation was flawless. Her ideas were clear, impactful, and visionary. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. Her actions spoke louder than words ever could. The room was filled with nods of approval, impressed glances, and appreciative smiles. When the presentation ended, the CEO of the company, Michael Grant, stood up to applaud. "Catherine," he said, his voice filled with admiration, "your leadership has not only elevated this company, but it has also elevated each one of us. You've shown us what it means to lead with purpose, with integrity, and with a vision for the future. We are all better for having worked alongside you." Catherine felt a wave of gratitude and pride wash over her. This was what she had always wanted, not just to succeed, but to inspire others to believe in their own potential. To show them that anyone, regardless of where they came from or how they started, could achieve greatness. After the meeting, Catherine walked back to her office, her mind still buzzing with the impact of the day. As she sat down at her desk, she felt a moment of stillness. It was the calm after the storm, the realization that she had not only arrived, but had built a legacy. She thought about the journey, the days when she felt invisible, the moments when she doubted herself, and the many times she had to fight to prove her worth. And now, here she was, a leader in every sense of the word. But Catherine knew that the journey didn't end here. This was just the beginning. She had the power to shape the future, to continue inspiring and leading with purpose. The world was wide open, and she was ready to take on whatever came next. With a smile, she closed her eyes for a moment, grateful for everything that had brought her to this point. And as she opened them again, she knew that her story was far from over, it was only just beginning.